there's this sort of rule by terror happening at the moment. You get caught with a cell phone in Mosul, you will probably die. It's that bad. And so getting information out is getting more difficult. However, we have heard in the last hour or so that there have been some pretty accurate coalition airstrikes on a number of targets inside of Mosul. One other thing we've been hearing more about is this sort of rounding up by ISIS of civilians from towns and villages just on the outskirts of Mosul, even the outer suburbs. And we're hearing that they're actually, in one case, being brought in numbers, in their thousands, and basically dumped in the centre of the city and left to their own devices. No food, no water, no shelter provided, just put there. And this is all part of this human shields, which is a weapon of ISIS, let's face it. It's going to be difficult to see how you assault a city with so many civilians, not just present, but being actively used as human shields. And those numbers being added to it appears every day, George.
Human shields. Obviously, as these forces move forward, that will be a difficulty, a very complicated part of this fight. And if you could just tell us a bit more. So 232 people, these civilians who were executed for being disobedient, Michael.
Yeah, well, many of those, we're told, were former members of the security forces, either the military or the police. We also did hear, there's something else too that came up the other day, which is isolated, sporadic incidents of local resistance popping up and shooting ISIS members. 5 were killed the other day, but then what happened was ISIS went in and rounded up hundreds of people after that happened. Now, we're told that civilians from that group have been released, but again, the members of security forces or police and so on have been kept. So you've got this situation where those 232, most of those were from the security forces, but also we're hearing now of more former members of the security forces, even the police. We heard even traffic cops are being pulled aside and kept by ISIS at the moment inside of Mosul. And given the fate of those 232, you can only wonder what the fate is of those they're rounding up now. One of the tragedies of what happened when ISIS came into town was all the records, the employment records of the security forces, right down to the local traffic cops, were still there. ISIS knows who these people are, and it seems like they've been rounding them up and isolating them, and one can't imagine what their fate might be, George.